I'm Kirk Harnack. On This Week in Radio Tech, I'm joined by Tom Ray, Chris Tobin, and Bill Putney. He's a new guest. We talk about putting a new community FM radio station on the air, how the equipment is selected, installed, and tested. TWiRT is up next.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiRT.
Bandwidth for This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This is This Week in Radio Tech, episode 86, recorded June 8th, 2011. Bill Putney builds a new FM station. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Telos Systems and the new HX1 and HX2 digital telephone hybrids. Information on the web at telos-systems.com/HX. And by Trim Tonic. Trim Tonic is a natural appetite suppressant tonic that takes the edge off of being hungry. Go to trimtonic.com and use offer code TWiT for 20% off. It's time for This Week in Radio Tech. Hello there, I'm Kirk Harnack, and I am so glad that you have joined us. We're going to try to entertain and inform you for an hour. We usually fail. Look, I mean, don't get your hopes too high. We usually fail. But I've got some great co-hosts, so let's go right ahead and introduce them. From the Hudson Valley of New York, working for Buckley Broadcasting and WOR, famous 3 call letters in New York City, it's Tom Ray. Hello, Tom.
Well, we only have 3 because we're in New York and somebody stole one. How you doing, Kirk? I'm doing well.
We've heard that before.
I'm VP of Engineering for Buckley Broadcasting, WR in New York. And after a little thing in Times Square the other day with Donald Trump and Sarah Palin, I want to show the Donald how to eat a piece of pizza. You fold it. You don't use a fork. Jeez.
There is no such thing as a fork.
Did he? I watched a little video clip of him and Palin sitting there, kind of, and he kept kind of touching his pizza. And did he ever eat any? Actually?
Yeah, it looked like he ate some cheese.
He ate a little cheese.
That's not how you eat pizza in New York. That's just not how you do it.
Now, do you fold it in half lengthwise before you eat it, or do you just eat it like a slice?
You fold it like this.
Oh, you fold. There you go. All right.
Fold it in half and you take a big bite.
There you go. That's something
you
we got
fold it the other way.
Speaking of New York City, and I got to go get some pizza with this guy from Manhattan, the best-dressed engineer in radio. Hi there, it's Chris Tobin. How you doing, Chris?
Hello, Kirk, Tom, Bill. I'm a broadcast technologist with the CBS Radio Group here in New York City with our 3 AMs and 3 FMs, and I do enjoy pizza. And Tom is right. There's only one proper way to eat pizza when you're in New York City. If you're outside of New York, well, you're on your own. And don't put anything other than, let's see, cheese, tomatoes, sausage, maybe pepperoni, none of the pineapples, no chicken, no broccoli, none of that other stuff.
And hot peppers. Don't forget hot pepper. Gotta have hot peppers.
Yes. That's the proper way to do it.
That New York pizza is awesome. Here in Nashville, I usually end up getting something from, you guys are going to probably be at Papa John's. That's nearby. We get that. Cece's.
Papa John's.
You know, the whole family.
Sometimes you have to make do with what you can.
I know.
That's right.
Cece's, the whole family can eat for what, $11.15 or something. It's pretty.
You get what you pay for.
You do.
Yeah, that's about the cost of a slice in Times Square. But anyway,
Yes, I think you're exactly right.
That's one damn good slice.
One damn
you bet.
slice. We've got a guest, and I'm so glad to have him on the show. He's been in our chat room quite a bit and offered up some great advice and questions and things to ponder and chat about. And so let me introduce to you Bill Putney from Port Townsend, Washington. Hi, Bill.
From the shores of the shining Salish Sea. I'm the engineer for KPTZ, a new community broadcast station in Port Townsend, and glad to be here.
We're glad to have you on, too. And one reason we brought Bill on, not only, I mean, he asks such good questions and makes good comments in the chat room. In fact, Bill, your handle in the chat room is typically what, Navion?
Usually Navion, unless I've been dropped, and then it's Navion 1 or Navion 2 or
There you go. All right. Well, on Navion, look, you and I share a passion for not only broadcast engineering, but also flying little airplanes. Why don't you give us just a moment, tell us about your airplane and what you do with it.
Oh, yes. I have way too many expensive hobbies, along with ham radio and everything else. There's flying. And my current airplane of choice is a 1951 Ryan Navion. Ryan is are the people who built the Spirit of St. Louis. And sometime after that, they got a hold of a design from North American Aviation. And the Navion is an all-metal, four-place, single-engine airplane that looks something like a Mustang. People that own one like to think it looks like a Mustang, except it's tricycle gear. And I just enjoy the heck out of it. So that's all.
We're going to hear more from from Bill. Excuse me. As we move along, Bill's going to tell us about what a community radio station. Excuse me again. Means to a town that is otherwise not very well covered by a large city that's well not far away as the crow flies, but a good distance as the ambulance or the news truck drive. So Bill's going to tell us about that as we get more into the show. For the first few minutes of the show, we're going to talk about a couple of topical subjects, and I think one of these we've talked about before, but Bill, I want to get your take on this. I hope it's just going nowhere, but it's this lawsuit against broadcasters and some equipment manufacturers about hard disk automation and how this is threatening some stations. Radio broadcasters are prepping for a long legal battle over the automation technology that has become the backbone of their radio stations. A company called Mission Abstract Data, LLC, doing business as Digimedia, they filed a complaint in U.S. District Court for the District of Delaware alleging patent infringement by CBS Radio, Beasley Broadcasting, Cox Radio, Greater Media, Cumulus, Entercom, Town Square Media. They didn't sue my radio stations, thank goodness. Something about a turnip and blood. In all, more than 900 radio stations are involved in this lawsuit. Bill, I think we've mentioned this before on the show. What is your take on this lawsuit? Seems awfully frivolous to me.
Well, it's somebody probably that acquired this patent that feels now that they're owed some money. The automation has been with us for a long, long time. When I first got in this business back in, I guess the 60s sometime, automation was on reel-to-reel tape. I guess this specific suit is about automation using hard disks for the storage medium. But that's a suit that needs to have been defended, or a patent that needs to be defended about 10 years ago, 20 years ago, not a year ago. So I don't think it's a defensible patent at this time. And of course, we'd be sunk without it.
Yeah, I'm looking at an article from Radio World Online, rwonline.com, and it's one of the top stories this week by Randy Stein. Hard disk lawsuit threatens radio stations. And there's a nice diagram. There's a photo of Lindy Williams from Lotus Communications. He's their director of engineering, and some word from him. But there's also a diagram from the patent application about hard drive-based automation on an Ethernet backbone with various other connections. And the caption says the case hinges on two patents issued in the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to Robert J. Goldman, one in 97 and another in 98, both titled Selection and Retrieval of Music from a Digital Database. The diagram that is available, and Bert, you get a chance to show that yet, that diagram? This diagram shows what was submitted with the patent application. But I don't know much about patent law. These patents were issued in 97, 98. Presumably they were, applied for before then by a year or two or three or four. But I know there we go. So there's from the patent application, this diagram of a network. Yeah, there you have a network. Computers hung on the network. Imagine that, playing out audio.
On a token ring.
Yeah, token ring network. Yeah. So weren't we doing automation before this? I'm pretty sure we were.
Well, and I think, the we were doing certainly we were doing automation before this. Were we doing automation with storage on digital media? Not so sure. I know that probably in the 80s we had audio on media because of CDDB database that essentially is rip your CDs into your computer and it'll assign all of the artist and title stuff was in digital database and was being played out of digital systems. I'd be very surprised if there weren't automation systems around, whether they were the frontline manufacturers or not, but automation systems around that were using those files ripped to computers as automation, as we know it. So I think that the suit's a little late in the day.
This company, Mission Abstract, does acknowledge on their website, they put this up in last March, it's in the interest, they say this is Mission Abstract, the people bringing the suit, it's in the interest of all parties to understand as soon as feasible if there really is valid, documented prior art, and to minimize the amount of money spent on legal bills by all parties, if the claims being asserted are proven to be invalid due to prior art from Scott Studios, Enco, or someone else, then there will be no licensing program and the litigation will be dropped. So maybe it's a fishing expedition. Maybe they really believe there was no prior art at that time.
Well, shouldn't the prior art be the burden on the person applying for the patent? Why should I have to bear the burden of finding prior art to protect my assets because somebody feels they deserve money from me when it may not be justified?
Yeah.
And shouldn't the PTO be also working on that? That's part of what they do.
I'd be surprised if the patent office would. The patent office is going to settle this with the suit, or at some point. What's going to happen is that somebody's going to present documentation to the patent office, and the patent is going to be rescinded. I think there's prior art out there, and it's just waiting to be documented.
Yeah.
Well, seeing as I've had stations that had digital hard disk automation systems since 1992, and I met someone who actually designed his own system back in the mid to late 80s that was based on huge hard drives and dumb terminals. And it was all breadboarded, and it worked like a champ. So, I mean, hello, it's been out there.
It does turn out that apparently some of the key words about their patent was a single digital database, and that I guess that they're implying that a network would be required to make that happen. By the way, the first of the patents was applied for in '94 and granted in '97, so they applied for it in 94. They say prior to the invention set forth in Digimedia's patents, operation of a music-based radio station was a cumbersome and expensive process. In a typical prior art radio station environment, the discs to be played and broadcast were located and retrieved from a CD music library. The discs were then loaded into a CD player. The technology covered by the claims of the Digimedia patents was a revelation in the radio industry, according to its suit. Well, I do remember using those 60-disc Sony CD players along with Computer Concepts automation systems. And, for example, you couldn't schedule two songs that happened to be on CDs that were in the same player back to back. You had to, your music rotation program had to be aware of which player that the song was in.
And Arrakis Digilink, same thing.
Right. And although that wasn't necessarily networked, was that a common digital database, as the suit says that it.
I don't remember how that worked.
Is there contention that the patentable thing is that it's a common database, so an automation system that is a standalone would not be subject to this lawsuit, but an automation system where the server is separate, the data, the music storage is separate would be?
Yeah. I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to see. It's a good article in Radio World. It's kind of an extensive article that Randy Stein wrote, so check it out at RW Online. I think think you're going to enjoy that article. Hey, I want to tell you, before we get too far in the show, our show is brought to you by Trim Tonic at trimtonic.com and also by the folks at Telos, who, by the way, are my employer at telos-systems.com. We'll be hearing from both of those sponsors as the show progresses. Hey, Bill, it seems like you and I had talked earlier a little bit about EAS and your interest in the new EAS system. Would you remind me of our conversation? I've been around the world this week. Tell us about your interest in EAS and how.
You're going to ask me about EAS? I'm just getting into this. You know, I've been away from broadcasting for a while, and I started out my life in broadcasting, and then I went off and worked for a living and made some money. And then now I'm back in broadcasting again, making about the same amount that I was making when I left broadcasting. And EAS has happened in the meantime, and CAP has happened in the middle of that. And luckily, we've got a really good coordinator here in the state of Washington, and he dragged me kicking and screaming through the setup of our EAS box. So it's working, thankfully. But you know, we'll probably talk about it later. But this station is pretty much digital end to end. The microphone cable at the end of this microphone is about the last time where there's analog anything. And luckily, the CAP box is included. We leave the studio as EAS audio, digital audio, and it goes into the CAP box or into the EAS box. AES and EAS. Anyway, AES audio goes into the EAS box and then comes out AES again on the other side, out to the transmitter, and the transmitter has an AES input. So that's been a really nice thing. We don't have to go back to analog to go through the EAS box.
Okay, all right. Tom,
was that what you were thinking? Probably not.
Tom and Chris, have you guys had any more updates from your part of the world, New York City?
Not yet. I was over at the Office of Emergency Management the other day. They're working with the state right now to get a CAP server up and running. Matter of fact, I had a brand new EAS box walk in the door today, so I spent a good portion of the day playing with it. But it's going to be interesting when it gets going. There isn't going to be much change in EAS the way we know it right now. What we need to do is we need to install these boxes that are CAP compliant, and at some point there'll be a plan to utilize these CAP messages. Part of that is to allow the governors to come in and allow the governor to have direct access of the station, where that really doesn't exist now unless it's written into the state plan, and that's how it works under the state plan. So the national test is going to be interesting. There were a lot of things FEMA learned in Alaska. Matter of fact, I think if it wasn't today, it's tomorrow. Possibly. I don't know what the date is. There's going to be a town hall style meeting on the internet with FEMA to explain what to expect and such. But they had a meeting with us here in New York, and there was a lot of discussion about what they learned, what they're going to do, what they're not going to do. And of course, the big thing going around with all the talk show hosts is that Obama is going to be taking over our airwaves, and that's not true. He has no plans to be any part of this test.
He's got a lot better things to do than that.
Thank you very much.
There is an article in Radio Magazine, and this is at radiomagonline.com. It's an FAQ, frequently asked questions about EAS CAP. And by the way, in case you're just joining us or didn't know this, what does CAP stand for? It's Common Alert Protocol. Common Alert Protocol. And it's a simple but general format for exchanging all hazard emergency alerts and public warnings over all kinds of networks. CAP allows a consistent warning message to be disseminated simultaneously over many different warning systems, thus increasing warning effectiveness while simplifying the warning task. A lot of broadcasters have asked, does this mean that the duck quacks or duck farts, does this mean that they go away? what we have to, the same codes that we transmit our stations now? And the answer is nothing changes with what stations must send. Even EAS isn't changing yet. In fact, it's expected that the current EAS system will not be changed, but a separate CAP-capable data distribution system will be added to EAS plans. Good article in Radio Magazine. We'll put a link to this in the show notes so that you can see that at thisweekinradiotech.com. Chris, you've been a little quiet. Maybe I jumped on you. I'm sorry. Any changes or new information on CAP EAS from you?
No. To echo what Tom said, nothing's changed. Just being compliant and hoping that the governor or the president or anyone else doesn't accidentally have one of their minions to press a button and put their office on the air. And we have fun times like Reagan did when he was trying to bomb the Soviets and that mistake they made with the microphone.
Are you saying it might be possible for an unwary or unvigilant office to butt dial the entire state radio station network?
Absolutely. And Tom knows the meeting we had, what was it, last year when we talked with the FEMA folks or earlier? Yeah. And we're asking about the security and protocols and methods that would be used for entering into the system that, we'll call it. And, it was some interesting looking faces at that point.
Bzz, 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 beep, and here's the hit as they're sitting at the ball game and cussing somebody out. That's going to be really great.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, there was some serious questions we had with the FEMA folks in New York not this past visit, but a long time back. And, they were still trying to work it out. And think about it. What method do you use? Do you have the military officer that travels with the president, has the nuclear football, also now have another device that allows him to access the media network throughout the nation in the event of an emergency? And if so, what methods are used to secure that? Because if you look at some of the security breaches of the late days we've had, I'm not sure if people are good at that. And if you can access 10,000 radio stations if they're participating, that's a pretty big number. I'm just saying.
I don't know how it addresses or would probably leave security behind, but my impression is if the president wants to get on television, it's not real hard. He's usually surrounded by cameras, which are in one way or another connected back to networks.
Yes, but they still require someone calling the networks or making a broadcast to them saying the president would like to make a speech, time and date, or time is this, and people scramble to do it. He doesn't have direct access. That's the difference here. The box now reroutes audio, and you suddenly no longer hear yourself, but somebody else.
All right. Well, I'm pretty sure that in Venezuela, Hugo Chavez implemented such a system because I talked to the broadcasters who deal with that in Venezuela. Is that what we're talking about?
It would be something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a different republic.
Just saying.
Yeah.
In fact, I talked to Venezuelan broadcasters who said, yeah, we had to put a box in our station, and Hugo can get on the air anytime he wants, and on Saturdays he usually does for a couple hours.
It's a good thing we're a republic.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh. All right. Hey, our show is brought to you by Trim Tonic, and I want to tell you about them for just a minute. And then we're going to jump right into talking with Bill Putnam about this. Bill Putney about his radio station there. Trim Tonic. This is something that people like me could use, and I really think I'm going to order some of this. It's a natural appetite suppressant tonic. That means you drink this, tastes delicious. You drink it, and you're not as hungry. It takes the edge off of being hungry. Then you're not as likely to go to the refrigerator and graze or go eat that second piece of pizza that's beckoning you to come over, or go to the freezer and see that ice cream is really screaming for you. It's unique. Trim Tonic is unique in that it uses no stimulants to get that effect, like so many other products have done over the years. There's no caffeine, no hoodia. In fact, they use 8 active ingredients, some of which do have clinical studies showing their ability to curb appetite. Others are just believed to curb appetite or seem to have that effect, and reduce body fat by curbing your appetite. 3 main ingredients: Arachnothus aspera and Ervingia gabanesis. These are seed extracts, both of which are tropical plants used in India and Africa for curbing appetites. And the third is coca leaf extract. You can visit them at, braintonic.com. Spell out brain and then TONIQ. Braintonic.com for more information. By the way, if you want to order some, you enter the coupon code TWiT, and you'll get a 20% discount. That's like buying 4 and getting the 5th one for no. It's like buying 5 and getting a 6th one free. 20% discount off your order from Trim Tonic. Go ahead and check them out. You can go to trimtonic.com or braintonic.com. And you know what? Hey, you know what? If you're already skinny but you got to get smarter, try the Brain Tonic product. I think you're going to like that too. trimtonic.com. I thank them very much at Trim Tonic for being a sponsor of This Week in Radio Tech. All right, Bill Putney, you've come out of retirement from doing all the secretive things that you were doing and built a radio station. How'd you get involved with this community radio station, Bill?
I answered an ad. It was just that I think the station was, we had an engineer that, unbeknownst to me, was on his way to Arizona. And I answered an ad in November for a radio station engineering volunteer to help put the radio station on the air. And I thought, well, that'll be fun. I'll do that. And I had, I think, one meeting with the previous engineer. He handed me some paperwork, and he said, "Oh, by the way, I'll be in Arizona for the rest of the year. Have a nice time."
All right. Well, this radio station, is this a full power or low power radio station?
It's a Class A full power FM. Mm-hmm. If 900 watts can be called full power, it was the one. We got the license in one of those MX deals with about 30 other people, and after 10 years of trying to put a radio station on the air in Port Townsend, Jefferson County, Washington, we finally got one.
So prior to KPTZ, and by the way, their website, if you want to take a look at it, like it says on the lower third, there is kptz.org. So this is a community radio station. So it's licensed to whom? Who's the license holder?
It's licensed to Radio Port Townsend, which is a nonprofit organization that's governed by a board of directors. I'm on the board of directors, which I guess is kind of unusual to have an engineer in any sort of management role, but they seem to tolerate me pretty well.
By the way, I clicked on the store link at the KPTZ store, and I see towers with lightning bolts coming out of them on T-shirts. I got to tell you, I like this. I'm glad that lightning bolts are back in style for radio station logos. I do like that.
Our transmitter doesn't have any vacuum tubes either.
It doesn't? Oh, darn. That's where the lightning bolts usually emanate from, is vacuum tubes.
Usually, in my experience, that's where they've emanated from.
So, what I want to ask you about now is the how did you start selecting equipment? How did you define what you were going to need? I guess you got to define what kind of programs you're going to run, and then figure out what kind of equipment does it take to put this on the air. I'll shut up. You tell us how you figured out what you were going to buy and how that process went.
Well, it is. It's just exactly like that. We knew that there was Port Townsend and this radio market is kind of odd. Port Townsend is a town. Jefferson County is a county that has about 30,000 people in it. We're west of Seattle, Tacoma, and we have the Puget Sound between Seattle and us. So we can hear everything that goes on in Seattle. There's about 70 radio stations we can hear. But from the outset, we knew a couple of things. One is that we really didn't want to play the same programs they played in Seattle. Mm-hmm. So we knew we were going to do a lot of local production of radio. So that informed some of our choices about equipment.
Rented.
I'm getting a little side tone of somebody. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm hearing a bit too from sounds like from Chris Tobin. So you're trying to describe why this town, why this radio station is important to this town. You said all these signals come in from the Seattle area and from Everett. You said about 70 or so stations come in, but you're physically, you can't get to Townsend very quickly, so you don't get the interaction, I suppose, with news agencies out of Seattle. So you can get all the stations, but there's never any news or rarely news on TV or radio from Port Townsend. Is that what you're saying?
Well, right. I mean, Port Townsend is on the other side of the Sound, so the fastest way to get to Port Townsend from Seattle is to drive down to the ferry dock, put your news van on the ferry, float across the Sound, and then drive an hour and a half from the ferry dock at the other side to Port Townsend. So it's about a 4-hour round trip to send a news van out here to pick up the odd, man bites dog story. Yeah. The result is that short of the temperature and sometimes whether or not it's raining, although that's not very reliable, we get that much time on the evening news. They put up a big map and they show the temperature of Port Townsend and so much for the news coverage for Port Townsend. Which is good on a normal news day, but we kind of anticipate that when something exciting happens in the Puget Sound area that affects not only Seattle and Tacoma but Port Townsend, that we probably won't hear much about what's going on in Port Townsend.
Yeah, okay. So I'm looking at your equipment list here. You have a Logitech audio console system which has some IP interactivity available with it. I see you're using a Heil microphone just like I am. You have some CD players and an automation system that's more or less an open source automation system. Talk to us about how you select these things and the process of actually getting the station built.
Well, when I got involved in the station, we had an equipment list that I think probably came out of the Prometheus project, which was a project that to help establish community radio stations. And that list, I think, was a little bit stale. So the first thing I did was look at that list specifically with what we had in mind for programming. And I knew I wanted to update it a little bit. So I started combing the catalogs for equipment. And I kind of wanted to get more into the digital domain and out of all the analog stuff that has kind of been the last generation of broadcasting. And started from the beginning and worked towards the end. The automation system is Rivendell, which is a Linux-based system that's in the more or less in the public domain. There was probably, I think, 3 real AOIP choices around. Logitech was a newcomer to that, but someone from Logitech came out and spoke to our SBE meeting, and so I got to see it and touch it. Omnia, Axia, always a good choice. And I think Wheatstone has AOIP as well. So then it was a matter of looking at price and functionality, what we could afford, what would work in our environment, that kind of thing. And everything else kind of fell into place. At the point we decided to go digital with things, digital output CD players instead of analog output CD players. We took digital straight out of the automation system. We have turntables, Stanton turntables that have digital audio outputs. So just about the only thing left in the studio that doesn't have a digital output is the microphone I'm speaking on, which is a very nice microphone.
Well, my mouth doesn't have a digital output either, so it's probably okay to translate it into something analog. And it gets back to analog anyway to hit your ears. I noticed that you've got This Rivendell automation, I'm really curious about it. At every NAB show, I go and see them and see what's new. And of course, you can get a DVD with you can load it on a computer, on a beige box computer, and try it out. Tell us about your experience with getting the Rivendell automation going.
It's been pretty painless. I think we've got a ways to go to get the automation system up to its full capacity. It's like anything else. You learn the things you have to learn right away, and then about every day and a half you stumble across something that's really interesting that you wish you'd known before. The Rivendell system I got on a live CD and just plugged into a computer and booted it up, and it ran. And we fiddled with it for a few months, kind of to convince ourselves that it was the thing we wanted to do. And then it took me another week or so to figure out how to get digital audio directly out of the Rivendell system, so that we wouldn't have have to go back to analog out of the automation system and then back into digital in the console. So it comes straight from a CD, gets ripped into the automation system, gets stored on a disk, gets pulled out of the automation system as binary data, and goes straight into the audio console as AES audio. So we don't lose anything from the CD quality right out till it gets to the modulator.
So you've been in radio. Well, you were in radio years ago, I think, in Los Angeles, and now here. Mm-hmm. Okay, what do you really notice when you're able to stay digital from one end to the next, and not have any or too many places where you have to drop to analog? Of course, in your case, you're digital end to end. I guess your mic's obviously are analog, and the transmitter ends up putting out a signal that ends up being analog. But when you carry stuff digitally from end to end, what do you think that does for you?
Well, I mean, it's we put this station together. Lou Schneider and I, the guy who actually started the engineering project for the station, came back and gave me 2 weeks of his time, and we just stormed this studio, and we put about 1.5 miles of wire in the studio in 2 weeks, and most of it telephone wire. So you can run unshielded telephone wire in a studio where you're not right next to the transmitter, and you don't have to worry about RF getting into the wire. You can run twisted pair for everything. Because it's all bits, you don't pick up too much hum in the wiring, because you have a 16-bit sample that is always going to have a certain full-scale value. Once you put something in the system as digital, all of the leveling and all of the changes in levels between different pieces of equipment just goes away. That problem didn't exist. So, it just about turned on and worked first time, everything. I think I had a hum in one announce mic, and it was a miswire in a connector. Once it's in the digital domain, it's just pretty much flawless. I can't say enough good things about it.
This is a subject that's kind of worth talking about for a few minutes. The radio stations that I tended to work at in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s, I really skipped most of the AES audio era. To me, AES was just here's some YouTube videos, some screenshots of the Rivendell automation system. This is the open source automation system. Paravel Systems is the caretaker of this project. So if you look up Paravel or you look up Rivendell automation, you'll see about this. And Fred Gleason is one of the developers there. I guess he's the lead guy. Really good guy. I just disclosed that Paravel Systems is also a partner with my employer, Axia Audio. So you can get Linux-based Axia IP audio drivers for the Rivendell system and come out of the system. Instead of coming out analog or AES, you can come out in a AOIP format that way. But as I was saying, back on this issue of going from leaving analog, I worked at small-town radio stations. For me, I never saw a benefit in going to AES. It cost more than we had money to spend, and I did everything I could to keep the analog stuff working quite well. And honestly, in small markets, it seemed like our audio quality was just pristine as it could be as analog. I'm not saying that it wasn't as good as digital could be, but for us, it wasn't necessary. We skipped from the analog era to the AOIP era. So now the station that's one of that I'm part owner of is audio over IP. Now, I know in other places, especially big cities, Tom and Chris, you guys have had a ton of AES digital audio around there. Chris, why don't you comment on your own transitions from analog to AES and then from AES to other technologies, AOIP, I suppose.
Well, yeah, we're running AES pretty much throughout the plant. We still have some analog runs here and there. As Bill pointed out, going from analog to AES actually helped a lot for level control and keeping an eye on things. It makes it much easier to test and diagnose, and it's a known entity. You're right. With the analog, you can get away with noise and crackles, whereas digital, it's pretty much there or not. And then we're pretty much, let's see, the other IP audios that we're using would be things like IP codecs that we're using for outside broadcast and contribution to the programs. But in-house, it's pretty much AES-3 running around the plant from our commercial playout systems, as well as, let's see, on our sports station for the TV, we're doing AES on all the microphones. So to our cable providers and to the producers, it's AES. So we're about like 80% AES. The other 20% is a mixed bag of audio and some other stuff.
Tom, how about over at WOR? Tom, when I first met you at WOR on Broadway, seems like you guys were an analog plant. Did you have much AES there?
AE what? Oh, yeah. Well, when you first met me down on Broadway, we were down at 1440, and those studios had been built in the late 1970s. So everything in that hello, somebody just left. Everything in the plant was analog. I mean, we had original Pacific Recorders Series 1 consoles, which had actually hand-wired circuit cards and final amplifiers that were built by Jack Williams personally. We had nothing really that was the only thing we had that was AES actually was at the transmitter side after we turned on the HD radio. Then when we built our new facility at 111 Broadway, we went with an Axia system, which is all digital, and we have a combination of analog and digital inputs to the system. But once it hits the system, everything is bits. So
when you go,
it's a different way of thinking.
When you go into and out of an AOIP system, in your case Axia, but the other AOIP systems do this too, you can go in as analog, or you can go in as AES, and then you can come out as either analog or AES at some other point on the router or the mixer. So I guess you have your choice there of going in or out as whatever is convenient for you. If you have a satellite receiver that puts out AES, great, go into an AOIP system via AES. If you have an analog device, we'll go in as analog and come out somewhere else as AES if that's what you need to do.
That's correct, and that's the beauty of these newer systems. You have a lot of flexibility, and once it's in the digital realm, you've got a lot of. There's a lot you can do with it. You can move it from point A to B. Instead of going into a given room and having 25, 50, 75 pair of cables running between the studio and a master control room or a rack room. You have one piece of Cat 6, Cat 5, and you take a keyboard and you do a configuration and you're done. There's nothing else to do, and it saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of money when you're building, and it doesn't matter if it's an Axia system, if it's Wheatstone, if it's SAS, if it's Logitech. it's all pretty much the same once you get into the infrastructure on how to put it together. It just makes life so much simpler than the way we did it in days of yore.
Hey, Bill, back to you. Speaking of putting things together, tell us about now building the radio station. What did you have to build? 2 studios or 3? Transmitter site?
Oh.
How long does this take you?
Well, this is the studio is one of the studios I'm in now. This is the production studio. The studio is about 8 feet wide by 10 feet wide by about 4 feet wide, or 4 feet deep, if you will. We've got another studio that's a performance space that is just for performers, for interviewees, that kind of thing. And then there's an air studio that I think I was saying earlier is a great audio or great radio studio, but it has a window that backlights me. So that's why I'm not in that studio right now. The thing that we did do when we came up with the equipment list for these studios was that we duplicated the equipment so that the program air studio and the production studio are mirror images of each other, and you can run the station out of either one, and it's really easy to make that transition with digital audio. And of course, in our case, we have a Nautel transmitter that just accepts digital audio right off of the STL. But in terms of building the station, it was just thousands and thousands of hours of volunteers. The community really turned out for us, and we had people out here framing up walls and putting up drywall and putting insulation. They turned a 20-foot shipping container into a 2-room transmitter building. They dug a 500-foot trench for the electrical power from the street from the street into the transmitter. It was just an amazing amount of work, and I think it was just a recognition on the community's part that having a radio station is even in these days of internet everything is really something that was a value.
You mentioned volunteer work. You mean you had untrained people helping you build a radio station? How did that work out?
Well, it's a management skill that I think engineers, if they're at it long enough, get, which is directing other people to do things that if you had 8 hands, you'd do yourself. But there's just so many things around a radio station. They're not highly technical jobs that you can farm out, and you have to if you have a finite amount of time and one engineer to build the radio station, do all the paperwork, attend all the meetings, on and on. You just cannot do it all. You have to farm it out, and we've had some great volunteers to help.
Hey, I noticed you're using a product called a Comrex Brick Link as the link for your studio transmitter link. So this is this is a compressed audio over IP link. What is the facility between the two? Is it just your local internet service or something else?
No, I'm a little bit shy yet of the internet service here, and in fact, the internet service that we can get here in Port Townsend is limited to 600 megabit or 600 kilobits back towards the network, and I really didn't want to compromise the audio between the studio and the transmitter site. So what the Bricklink is doing is using the free lossless audio codec, the FLAC codec that's built in the Bricklink, and so we're running AES-3 audio into it. It FLAC encodes it, and then we get the same bits out at the other end, AES audio 3 out at the other end, to plug into our Nautel VS 2.5 transmitter. So pretty much from the time it leaves the mic cable all the way out there to the transmitter. I guess until it gets to the processor in the transmitter that turns the bits into frequency deviations. It's all digital.
Now, for audio processing, are you using the optional Or-band processor that can be had with the Nautel, or something else?
Yes, we have Or-band inside. I think we have Or-band inside card number 3 or something.
Yeah.
which made me kind of nervous.
Cool concept. So you could deliver live wire audio, or you could deliver AES or even analog into the Nautel, and they offer the Or-band audio processing inside the Nautel. So that's pretty cool. If that's some people like to mix and match. They like to do the traditional, have external processing, but it's probably a good choice for you guys to have it built right into the Nautel transmitter.
Hey, Bill, are you using anything in front of the BrickLink to protect it on the studio end, like a compeller or something like that?
Nope. Sorry, Charlie.
Wow.
We put it out there about. We put it out there about. I think we're probably run most of the time about 6 or 8 dB on peak, 6 or 8 dB below full scale. So it doesn't do too much clipping. I keep a pretty close eye on it, and I've got the board people, the board ops and DJs to understand what happens when things clip. So I try.
So you use a cattle prod, is what you're saying?
Out of there.
Cattle prod
yes,
process.
I've got some sharp implements that I use on occasion.
Hey, one little technical note.
It's been pretty good.
One technical note I'd like to point out, because I had given some thought to this a few years ago about having a processor for a digital STL, and then it occurred to me, now wait a minute, if you're using a digital audio console, well, it doesn't matter if it's AOIP or TDM based, whatever. If it's got a digital output on it, that's going to be an AES output, or it's going to have a 0 dB full scale at some point. When all the bits are ones, and you can't get any higher than that. Well, a digital audio processor or a digital STL system is also going to have that same clip level when all the audio bits are ones and it's 0 dB full scale. The point is that if you put a processor in there to protect the digital STL, well, what are you protecting it from? Because the only way to overdrive the digital STL would be to be overdriving out of the console. In other words, you got to blow digital 0 on the console in order to blow digital 0 on the STL. Therefore,
but digital 0 full scale is not defined the same on each piece of equipment.
That's right.
Really?
Yep. That's why if you take a look at the Omnia processors you guys produce, or take a look at an Or-band Optimod, you can set and define 0 dB full scale.
Tobin, you be the tiebreaker.
That's true.
It's true.
That is true.
No, what you're setting is the nominal operating level in reference to 0. You can't get higher than 0 dB full scale, and 0 dB, and you can't define 0 dB full scale as being less than 0 dB full scale. 0 dB full scale is 0 dB full scale
on your piece of equipment.
Bit for bit, bit for bit, 0 dB full scale. Now you can have every piece of equipment may have a nominal operating level that they think you should be operating at. There was a controversy for years: is the proper digital level for a CD -20 or -18 or -16 or -12 or nowadays -0.5 dB? But 0 dB full scale, isn't that 0 dB full scale no matter what piece of equipment it is?
Well, AES has a definition of 0 dB full scale.
Yeah.
And that's fine if you're sticking strictly, strict AES all the way through. But there are some pieces of equipment that will take an AES input and they do something internally, and it does change. 0 dB full scale for that piece of equipment is correct. What we run it for, of course, 0 dB full scales is we run some headroom at WOR, but we also run the compeller there just in case. And we do that right before clip level on the console and right before clip level on the STL. So they can't really hit that. They can hit it with the console, but they're not going to hit it and make it even worse once it gets into the STL.
I don't think it'll be any worse.
Well, it depends.
You
don't know my corn hops.
I think Eric Adler in the chat room agrees with me, but hey, look, I could be wrong. I asked. In fact, one thing that I did to research this question was I asked, okay, if you have a 24-bit depth system like AES that's 24 bits versus AES that's 16 bits. Like the output of a CD player would be 16-bit, and the input to a modern audio console would be 24 bits. I asked the question and found out the answer. Is 0 dB full scale the same on both a 16-bit system and a 24-bit system? The answer is yes. You can't go any higher than that. That's it. Now the bottom is different. The 24-bit bottom is 8 bits lower or a whole lot more dBs down than the 16-bit bottom, which, as we know, is about 96 dB down, and I think 24 is something like 138 dB down or so. But the top is the same.
Go ahead. The extra byte is on the bottom. The extra byte gives you more dynamic range down on the bottom end. Once you get to 65,000 in a 16-bit environment, you kind of hit the ceiling. You can't go anywhere from there.
All right. Well, maybe this will remain a mystery, or maybe maybe one of us will look up the answer. My point is, I don't think you need an audio processor between two pieces of equipment that are AES, because you're not going to. There's nothing to protect. You got to blow one to blow the other.
Right. Getting back to the
disagree.
I'm sorry, what?
And you're actually talking about
some
dynamic
program
range.
directors I would disagree.
And you said a strange phrase, dynamic range. What is that, Chris? You did.
No, all waveforms you can tap dance on. I don't know anything about dynamic range or valleys and peaks. No.
Hey, we like square waves. Come on.
Well, tell you what, let's talk. We got to break for a second before we wrap things up and tell you about my employer and our sponsor of this part of the show, Telos Systems. We're going to show you here something on our website at the telos-systems.com website. It's a brochure about the Telos HX1 and HX2 telephone hybrids. If you've been in the radio business, you probably have heard of the Telos 1 hybrid, or maybe the Telos 1 Plus 1. Well, those products are getting a little long in the tooth. They've been around for 16, 17, 18 years now. And even though they, for the price, certainly the highest performance available in terms of getting a phone call to sound good on the radio or on your podcast or on your audio production, the new generation of Telos hybrids is available, and they're very utilitarian in nature. Hey, I was just at a radio station in Detroit where I saw 20 of these things deployed at news editing workstations for getting actualities, for getting interviews. They work great. And they also are designed to make calls that come in from cell phones or people with a VoIP connection at their end sound better too. The HX1 is the Telos product that has one phone line. It's one hybrid. These are great for production rooms, for podcasting locations. In fact, we probably ought to see if we can get Leo to get one of these at his new location. He's using his Extreme to take phone calls from time to time, which works, but it's not really a hybrid. Anyway, the HX1 and HX2, what they do is they connect to the phone line, and they connect the caller's audio to your audio equipment in the best possible way. The HX1 and HX2 have Omnia audio processing built into them. You get on-screen level displays there to show you the incoming audio from the caller and the outgoing audio to the caller. These hybrids also have what we call a long tap, and this allows them to do a good echo cancellation when you're talking to callers that are calling in on a circuit that's got some delay, like you're talking to a cell phone caller, or you're talking to someone who has a voice over IP connection at their end. Now, if you've got voice over IP connection at your end, no problem. You can use an ATA, an analog terminal adapter, to turn VoIP into POTS. And the HX1 and HX2 will work great with that. There are all different phone standards around the world. You'd think it'd all be pretty standard, right? One standard? No. Every country has different ring cadences, even different ways they use the battery voltage, or whether they have reversal of battery voltage to indicate a hang-up, or they drop the loop current. Well, the HX1 and HX2 have dip switches to set up which country you're in, so that the internal logic will work with whatever phone system that you're using in whatever country you're in. There's a bunch of these, for example, in India right now, and they have a little bit different system over there. You get analog inputs and outputs on XLR connectors on the back. You get your phone line input and a feed through, a loop through for your phone line output, so you can hook your telephone there, so you can dial out. And then there's the dip switches to set up the behavior. These also have auto answer, so if you need to have a line that auto answers, you got it right there. You can hook it up to a machine that plays back something like we used to do in the old days, or more likely, you can hook up the Telos to an intercom system. So when you have a reporter in the field, that reporter can call into a phone number and be connected with their little earbud, so they can hear the director's comments and know when to go on the air. Check them out, the Telos HX1 and HX2. Go to the website telos-systems.com/HX, the new standard in digital hybrids from Telos. They're really, really, really good. All right, guys, we got just a couple more minutes. Bill, I want you to make any last comments here about the stations on the air. How long has it been on the air now?
We went on the air March 14th. Is that right? May 14th. Sorry, May 14th. Been on the air for three weeks, and we're ramping up the programming. So we're kind of depreciating the automation system and ramping up live shows with live on-air personalities, more local events, and that kind of thing. So I think we're doing a darn good job for as young as we are. And I just like to thank you for having me on. I like to spread the gospel, I guess.
Hey, since you've got a new station there and new equipment, it's going to be interesting to see what goes wrong in terms of either infant mortality or, whoops, I installed this equipment in a closed cabinet, it's getting too hot. You know, what kinds of after-construction maintenance issues come along? Now, Tom Ray and Chris Tobin have both built new radio stations in the last few years in New York City. And they've got pretty complex systems there. I know there's things that they've come across that... hey, Tom, what's been a gotcha for you when you built new studios for WOR? What did you say? What did you come back and say? You know, we really should have thought about that a little differently. We should have done this differently than we did.
We should have probably come up with a way to do a little bit better airflow through the cabinets in the studios, because the at least the control rooms are awfully tight, and it does get warm under there. The console mix engine and the audio nodes produce quite a bit of heat, surprisingly. So I just wish we had a little better airflow, but it hasn't really caused us any problem. But you know, I mean, 6 years in, we've lost a couple of mix engine power supplies, but at 6 years in, that doesn't surprise me.
Hey, Chris Tobin, you guys have some hot air going on there, but it might be the talent.
Well, yeah, we have hot air in the form of talent, presenters, and a few other things. But we did discover in the early installation time that the thought process was we'd put one or two computers in a control room, and then, as always, you plan for, say, 6 racks in your TOC, you wind up with 8. We wound up with more computers than we originally designed. As Tom mentioned, heat in the cabinets is definitely an issue, and it's still, I think, something that most architects who design furniture don't seem to grasp. Because after talking with a few folks and explaining the situation, it still seemed like a foreign topic to them. But yeah, I would say cabinets heating up, and the computers, because now with the computers speeding up as they are with dual processors and quad processors, what was maybe a 400-watt computer in the past is now close to 800 watts coming out. That's a lot of heat when you add 2, 3, 4, 5 CPUs in a cabinet.
Man, that's like a heater, isn't it?
Yeah.
Chris,
yeah.
What parting advice do you have for Bill as his station is now on the air and chugging along? Should he plan a vacation anytime soon?
Definitely. If he's confident in the way he built the place, take a vacation. Have somebody else that can cover. Why not? You need to be mentally fresh in order to take care of those troubles when they come up.
Hey, Bill. So go ahead and schedule your vacation. You don't need to hang around, apparently.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll forward all my calls to Chris then.
Fine.
I told you this. Bill, I told you this hour would slip by pretty fast, and it sure has. Thanks, Bill, for being on with us from Port Townsend, Washington. Any parting remarks for us, Bill?
No, I was just reminded when the guys are talking about heat and things. We're we're air conditioningless here. We don't get very high temperatures in Port Townsend, but all this equipment, in the studios is all fanless, and they don't seem to want to put up with nearly as much heat as the announcers do. So summer is coming.
Or nearly as much heat as the announcers produce. Hey, Bill, I got a quick question for you. It's not tech related. I know it's a young station. I know you said you've only been on the air for about 3 weeks. Has there what's been the reaction from the community? Have you heard or sensed anything out there? What they think of the station, or is there support building? Do you see that, or?
It's kind of not a well kept secret, but the fact that we're on the air is a secret that's kind of gradually getting out in the community. But the support's been overwhelming. Everybody, certainly the local officials, are excited to have some way to get emergency and that kind of information out. People are excited to hear news about their, what's going on around them. We went out and we did a bunch of station IDs. Just everybody off the street did an ID, and we have those in a cart that rotates through. So
That's great.
Everybody hears themselves on the radio. So the response has been just tremendous, and we really appreciate it.
Well, it's good to hear. It's good to hear that local radio is alive and well, and your station right here just proves it.
Well, and in Port Townsend, it's not like we're in the big city where we have fiber optic to every home. Some of those internet options are just not available for people. And what we think of as traditional broadcasting is really something in the rural areas that makes a difference in people's lives. So we're happy to be here.
Bill, thanks for being with us. I sure appreciate it, and I'd like to have you back on again sometime. I'd like to talk about airplanes. You and I could talk for hours about that. So appreciate you spending an hour with us.
Ham radio, whatever you want.
You should. We should get you on the ham radio show. It's not mine to get you on, but I bet Bob Heil would like to have you on talking ham radio with him.
I just want old guys like me on there.
Hey, Chris Tobin, thank you for being our co-host from New York City, the best-dressed engineer in New York, from Manhattan.
You're welcome. Anytime. It was a good time tonight. Congratulations, Bill, on your new station, and good luck in the future endeavors.
And
thank you.
Tom Ray. Tom Ray, thank you for being with us from the Hudson Valley of New York. Glad you made it home and made it on the show tonight.
Yeah, me too, and I'm glad to be part of this. This was a very interesting discussion, and Bill, congratulations on the station, and much success.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks to Burke back at the TWiRT Network for doing our switching and providing just all the fancy things we have, all the visual aids, and getting the audio just right. Appreciate you very much, Burke.
Thanks, Burke.
I want to remind you that you can subscribe to our show by going to the TWiRT.tv website, twit.tv/TWiRT, T-W-I-R-T. There, you can listen or watch right there on that website, or you can subscribe in many different ways, including iTunes, RSS feeds. If you have a Zune, you can subscribe that way. There's all different options there. Check out show notes from the show and also back episodes as well. We're still maintaining the website thisweekinradiotech.com. You might find a few more show notes on that as we update that every week, and a link to the same audio version that the TWiRT network has. Also, if you would, please patronize our sponsors this week, trimtonic.com, or you can go to braintonic.com. Whether you want to reduce your fat or improve your brain, either way, you can check it out at that website, or those websites, trimtonic and braintonic.com. And thanks to telos-systems.com for sponsoring the show as well. Tune in next week. We'll look forward to seeing you on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.